If you're a custodial supervisor at a local high school, you know that cleanliness is key, and that the best place to get cleaning supplies is from Grainger. Grainger helps you stay fully stocked on the products you trust, from paper towels and disinfectants to floor scrubbers. Plus, you can rely on Grainger for easy reordering, so you never run out of what you need. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
All right, man, welcome back to The Run with me, Manny Wilson. I appreciate you for tuning in. Of course, if you want to go ahead and leave your thoughts, hit us up on the voicemail line, 219-413-9405. And of course, we'll play it back on our next episode. Go check out the voicemails that was left on the last episode, actually. It was pretty cool. Had some Falcons fans call in prior to the big win of the Buffalo Bills. So it was cool to play that back after the Falcons ended up winning. So anyway, some games that we got happening in week 7 of the NFL. It's already week 7, which is crazy. Means we're almost at that midway point pretty soon. But anyway, kicking it off, Thursday night football, Steelers versus the Bengals happening in Cincinnati. No Joe Burrow, obviously. So personally, I'm siding with the Pittsburgh Steelers to win this game. After that, Sunday football, we have the Falcons and 49ers in prime time. This game is happening at Levi Stadium. Expecting a very good game, so listen to the first half, and I'm expecting a good game. I do have the Falcons winning for multiple reasons that I'm not going to restate again, so listen to the first half. Other than that, we got the Rams playing the Jaguars in England. This game is happening at 8:30 a.m. This is Central Time, Eastern Time, probably 9:30, and Pacific Time. Boy, you're getting up at 6 a.m. sharp, which is just insane. I can't believe that they're doing a home team like this. The Rams are in LA. If you're in LA, you got to get up at 6 in the morning to watch this game. Man, I know, I get it's beneficial for the people in London at that time, but the home team fans can't even watch the game unless they get up at 6 a.m. To me, that's outrageous. I couldn't imagine. Like, for some people, Sunday is their only day off, and you still got to get up early and watch this team. It's crazy. So I probably won't be watching this Jaguars-Rams game. I would love to, but I'm just not getting up early to watch this game. So I'll probably catch second half or whatever. I'm just not going to get up early, man. Sundays are days I get to sleep in, and I have to take advantage of that. I'm sorry. Other than that, we got the Saints playing the Bears at Soldier Field in Chicago. Dolphins playing the Browns. Patriots playing the Titans. Raiders will take on the Chiefs in Missouri at Arrowhead Stadium. Eagles playing the Vikings in Minneapolis. Panthers will take on the New York Jets. Now, the Jets here are yet to win a game. They still haven't won a single game. And honestly, I don't really think they'll beat the Panthers because, yes, the Panthers, they can be a laughingstock at times. But usually after Bryce Young throws that first interception, he turns into a completely new person, turns into Tom Brady, turns into Cam Newton. He's just like a completely different quarterback after that first interception for some reason. But in the last few games, after Bryce Young threw his first interception, he started dominating, ended up winning the game. So, crazy. But I definitely got the Panthers beating the Jets over here, so interested in that game for sure. The Giants will take on the Broncos. I'm curious about how the Giants will look after that big win last week. So, Broncos are 4-2. They've been rolling right now, and they're in this conversation about statistics that I'm about to have. So, Colts will play the Chargers in Inglewood. That's going to be a great matchup as well at SoFi Stadium. But I think I want the Colts to win, and I have the Colts winning. But I'm expecting a duel here, and this is definitely one of them games I'm looking forward to watching come Sunday. Cowboys and Commanders will also be a good game. It's happening midday. Ooh, man, you love to see this, but Cowboys are going to be home. I'm anticipating this matchup. And then Packers will play the Cardinals. And for Monday Night Football, another doubleheader. One, I don't know who keeps bringing these doubleheaders for Monday Night Football. Personally, it's hard. It's hard to watch both, man. It's hard to be fully invested in two games on Monday Night Football, especially if your favorite team is playing on one of these games. So I'm not really a fan of these doubleheaders on Monday Night Football. It's a little weird to me, bro. It's a little weird, honestly. But you got the Lions and the Buccaneers playing each other on Monday Night Football. And, man, this is going to be a great matchup. I'm so excited about this matchup between the Buccaneers and Lions. Lions are 4-2. lost last week against the Chiefs. Buccaneers are 5-1. Baker Mayfield has been on a tear. He's been closing games out. He had comeback wins early in the season. Offensively, they're not really ranked as a high priority team. When you look at the top 5 teams in yards per game or top 5 in rushing yards or passing yards, they're not really there. Like, you can't find them, but yet they will find a way to beat you, and they've been getting wins. So I'm intrigued, and I'm just expecting the Buccaneers to be, I'm expecting this game to be a shootout for sure. Between Lions and Buccaneers, man, they saw each other in the playoffs a couple years back or a couple seasons back. So I'm curious. I'm expecting a good game here. And then Lions, obviously, you know, they just came off of the L against the Kansas City Chiefs, and that was just a crazy game in itself there. So, oh man, I'm expecting a good game. Lions are also pretty nice, but you can't really find, they're in points per game right now. I think they're second in points per game as of right now, behind the Colts, which is crazy. But Lions are definitely a great offensive team. Buccaneers are definitely a great offensive team with the MVP on there, who I think is the MVP, Baker Mayfield. So it'll be an interesting matchup here to see what can go down, man. So both teams dealing with a lot of injuries. Baker Mayfield doesn't have half of his receivers or any receivers, truthfully. Lions done lost half of their defense. So it'll be interesting to see this Buccaneers-Lions matchup. I think if I have to choose a winner, I don't want to really go against Baker Mayfield because of how he's been closing these games out in the first half of this season or through so far of week 7 in this season. Baker Mayfield has been on a tear, so I don't want to go against him, but the Lions are at home. So I think because the Lions are at home, I'm going to go with the Detroit Lions to win this game over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Plus, they are coming off a kind of a bogus L in the Kansas City Chiefs game. So I think the Lions will bounce back and end up winning this game and giving the Buccaneers another L. So it's going to be a great matchup, though. So I'm geeked for this on Monday Night Football. So other than that, you got the Texans and the Seahawks in Monday Night Football, and I probably won't be paying too much attention to this game, truthfully. But I'm hoping it's another good matchup that we get to see. But double headers, I'm going to be focusing on the Buccaneers and Lions in this game. So excited about that. Now, however, look, we got some other things too, because the numbers in the NFL right now, when you look at all the teams who are good or proclaimed to be good, or the teams who might be bad in the NFL, it's hard to really gauge who's who and who's doing what and what teams are doing what. So the thing that I wanted to break down is just the stats of who's doing what on defense and who's doing what on offense. So starting with the defense, this is the top 5 defenses based on yards per game right now. You have the Atlanta Falcons, the Denver Broncos, Cleveland Browns, Houston Texans, and the Green Bay Packers are the top 5 defenses in yards allowed per game. Now, to break this down a little bit and to dissect each of these teams and what they're doing defensively, the Falcons, they did have a bye week. So that's partially of why they're leading in defensive yards per game. Obviously, it's still very impressive because they are keeping their name in that top 5 conversation, whereas there's other teams who play less than 6 games so far to this point, and yet they're not in that conversation of top 5. So I still think it's very impressive for them. They're first in passing yards allowed, first in total yards allowed. So Falcons, that defense has proved to be legit so far in every game this season. They've also gotten a sack. They sacked Josh Allen 4 times. They forced Josh Allen to throw 2 interceptions as well in that game last week in prime time. So, Falcons defense has proved to be legit to an extent. The only thing that has always been my concern is just the consistency. How consistent are the Falcons going to be through the rest of the season, especially on both ends of the ball, and more particularly for this conversation on the defensive end. Now, number 2, we had the Denver Broncos. Broncos are second in yards per game allowed defensively. They're third in passing yards allowed per game. They're second in points per game allowed, and they're 6th in rushing yards allowed per game. Denver Broncos are an elite team defensively. It's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. They're scoring on the offensive end, keeping them in a lot of games. But defensively, this team is only allowing 15 points per game against them. And the AFC West is nice. So the Broncos are nothing to play with when you talk about who's legit on what side of the ball. Safe to say, Broncos are elite defensively. Yeah, they got a 4-2 record too. So they're sitting pretty comfortable right now. They look good, especially when you watch or you put together the eye test along with the statistics. So Broncos definitely solidified that 2 spot in defensive yards per game. As of right now, this is up to week 7, so anything can change after this week. However, the Denver Broncos or the Cleveland Browns is at number 3 right now in rushing yards allowed per game. They're 3rd in defensive yards allowed per game, and the Cleveland Browns are also 7th in passing yards allowed per game so far. Now, despite all of these things about the Cleveland Browns, this is a team, defensively, they're the real deal. It's safe to say Browns are the real deal defensively. I mean, you're 3rd in total yards allowed per game defensively, 3rd in rushing yards allowed per game, 7th in rushing yards allowed per game. They just need help from the offense. They're the real deal defensively, but they haven't scored over 17 points in a single game of the season just yet. And we're up to week 7. So the Browns, they got a lot of work to do offensively. It's only so many games the defense can keep them in games and competing and staying in the game. But like, you can't really do much if you're not getting points on the board to outscore the other team. So defensively, Browns are the real deal for sure. But they're 1-5. So they're just not translating to getting wins on the offensive side. So that's the change I need to see from the Cleveland Browns. 4, Houston Texans are 4th in defensive yards per game. They had a bye week, so they also, played one less game than a lot of other people. But ultimately, like, this team, they're pretty solid defensively so far. They play less games, and it's still very impressive, but 4th in defensive yards allowed per game, which is pretty good. 1st in points per game allowed for the Texans, and they're 5th in passing yards allowed for the Texans as well. So, these type of things are good to see if you're a Texans fans. And the most impressive thing for me is, yes, obviously the Texans defense is stepping up big time right now, but teams are only averaging 12 points per game against the Texans. Nobody has got above 10 points against the Texans besides the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have the potential MVP in Baker Mayfield. So the offense struggled early on, which kind of hurt that record and the overall narrative with the Houston Texans. The O-line couldn't hold anything, but the last 2 weeks, they've won 2 straight games, and they hung up 44 on the Ravens and held the Ravens to 3 points. So if anything, your doubts about CJ Stroud and the offense, those are, I get it. Those are, that's acceptable. I understand those type of doubts with the Texans, but defensively, there's no doubt about it that this team is pretty elite defensively. I think they're the real deal. Allowing only 12 points per game against anybody is impressive. Holding everybody to 10 or less besides one team is pretty impressive so far up to week 6. So man, you got to give them some credit there. And then the 5th team here is the Green Bay Packers. The Packers, they did have a bye week as well, but they're 1st in rushing yards allowed and 5th in total yards allowed per game. So Packers, they kind of got it figured out on both ends of the ball so far. 3-1, and I mean, they're looking at another matchup too that they might get some wins on. So it'll be interesting to see what the Packers can do. Now, however, we will discuss more of the offensive side of this at a different time. Only thing I'll say right now for the offense in terms of yards per game is the team's ranking in yards per game total right now. Top 5 teams based on yards per game offensively is the Dallas Cowboys, the Falcons at number 2, the Buffalo Bills at 3, Indiana Colts at number 4, Rams at number 5. So those are the top 5. You got Cowboys, Falcons, Bills, Colts, and Rams based on offensive yards per game offensively. So 2nd in passing yards is the Cowboys. They've been doing their thing. 3rd in points per game. The thing that probably stands out to me the most out of all these teams is really the Colts. The Colts, 4th in total offensive yards per game. Colts are also 1st in points per game, which is impressive. And they look like the real deal so far. And you can't just discredit what Indiana Jones is doing right now. Daniel Jones is balling, and he's 5th in he has the team 5th in passing, I should say. So Colts, they're the real deal, man. I think if you haven't watched the Colts so far, you definitely need to tune in and see what kind of brand of football they play, because they look good, man. I would continue to vouch for the Colts and what they're doing, because they actually really do look good, and they're an elite team. So what's crazy about this is, like, each time you go to a different stat category, it's a new top 5. at who does what good and who does what the best. So if anything, this only shows that there's a lot of good teams in football, and this is only the top 5 of each team. If I was to do the top 10, it is a little more, like you see a little bit more of the same teams in that top 10 compared to the top 5, but the only teams that's showing up the most offensively in a consistent stat category is really Colts, Bills, Falcons. Outside of those 3, you're not really seeing that many teams. So truth is, it's hard to get a good gauge of what teams is so good right now through the first 7 weeks of football when the stat categories are so evenly spread amongst everyone. So it's pretty cool. I like it. I love that we don't know who's going to go to the Super Bowl or anything right now. To me, it's one of the favorite things about this season so far. I love it. So fact is, there's just multiple good teams so far in the league. So that's all we got, man. I do appreciate you guys for tuning in. Of course, anyone who tapped in on the live, you listening on Instagram, Twitter, or I don't really post on Twitter, but TikTok, YouTube, follow us on all of that stuff at The Run Podcast. Follow us on YouTube, The Run with Manny Wilson. And other than that, man, a positive note on the day is just going to be continue to put your best foot forward. Simple as that. That's all I'm going to leave it as. And other than that, man, I'm up out of here. I do appreciate you for tuning in, and we'll be back later on next week. And so on and so on and so on.
If you're a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing facility and your machinery isn't working right, Grainger knows you need to understand what's wrong as soon as possible. So when a conveyor motor falters, Grainger offers diagnostic tools like calibration kits and multimeters to help you identify and fix the problem. With Grainger, you can be confident you have everything you need to keep your facility running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.